The rain streaks across the window, a grey curtain blurring the world outside. Inside, the cabin lights dim, wrapping the passengers in a calm pre-flight twilight. Flight 719 was supposed to be an ordinary journey, a simple hop from one city to another. But within minutes, the fate of 178 souls would rest entirely on a girl sleeping soundly in row 12, seat B. She had no idea that the steady hum of the engines was about to become a symphony of chaos, and her simple journey would turn into a desperate fight for survival. As the plane ascended, a fragile peace settled over the cabin. Passengers read, listened to music, or drifted off to sleep. Among them was Clara Mitchell, head resting against the cool glass of the window, lost in a dream. The gentle rhythm of the engines was a lullaby. But outside this bubble of tranquility, a crisis was brewing, just silent, gathering storm that was stalking the aircraft. And it wasn't just outside. Inside the cockpit, a far more immediate danger was unfolding. Suddenly, the calm was shattered. A voice, strained and urgent, crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. If there are any licensed pilots on board, please come forward to the cockpit immediately." A wave of confusion rippled through the cabin, quickly turning into a tide of fear. Heads turned, eyes searched, passengers looked at each other, their faces etched with a single, terrifying question. What was happening? The flight attendants moved through the aisles, their professional smiles replaced with tense, worried expressions. The initial murmur of concern swelled into a low roar of panic. The urgent announcement jolted Clara from her sleep. She blinked. Disoriented, the words slowly piercing through the fog of her dream. "Licensed pilots. Come forward." Her heart hammered against her ribs. She was a pilot. She'd spent hundreds of hours in the sky, flying smaller aircraft. But she wasn't a commercial pilot. Her license wasn't for a massive jet like this. To make matters worse, she'd left all her credentials, her logbook, everything, back at home in a rush to catch this flight. She wasn't supposed to be a hero. She wasn't even supposed to be awake. As passengers around her grew more frantic, a flight attendant rushed to her row, her eyes scanning faces. A man next to Clara pointed. "She said she flies planes." The flight attendant locked eyes with Clara, her voice trembling slightly. "Can you fly a plane? A big one?" Clara hesitated. Every instinct screamed no. This was impossible. This was insane. Birth. As she looked into the flight attendant's desperate eyes and heard the rising fear in the cabin, another instinct took over. The one that had made her fall in love with flying in the first place. She took a deep breath and gave a small, firm nod. The cockpit door swung open to reveal a scene of controlled chaos. The captain, a veteran with decades of experience, was wrestling with the controls, his face pale and beaded with sweat. His co-pilot was slumped over in his seat unconscious. A sudden, severe medical emergency had taken him out of commission at the worst possible moment. The plane lurched violently as the storm hit with full force. Rain and hail hammered against the cockpit window, the wind screaming like a banshee. The captain looked at Clara, his eyes filled with a mixture of desperation and disbelief. He saw a young woman, barely out of her 20s, looking just as scared as everyone else. "This isn't a drill," he said, his voice grim over the roar of the storm. "Are you absolutely sure you can do this?" For a moment, all the air seemed to leave Clara's lungs. But she looked at the controls, at the captain's strained face, and thought of the 177 other people on board. She found a calm center within the storm inside her. "Yes," she replied, her voice quiet but steady. "I can try. And sometimes, try is all a hero needs to begin." Clara strapped herself into the co-pilot's seat, her mind racing. The cockpit was a dizzying array of flashing lights and wailing alarms. Every dial and screen screamed danger. The turbulence was relentless, shaking the aircraft so violently it felt like it would tear apart. Her hands shook as she gripped the yoke, the cold metal a stark reminder of the reality of their situation. But as the captain began barking instructions, a strange thing happened. Her fear sharpened into pure, unadulterated focus. Every instinct, every hour of training, kicked in. The captain guided her, his voice a steady anchor in the roaring chaos. "Easy on the rudder. Watch your altitude. Keep her steady. Each command was a lifeline. Clara responded, her movements becoming more fluid, more confident. She wasn't just following orders, she was anticipating them, feeling the aircraft, becoming one with the machine. In the cabin behind them, passengers prayed. Strangers held hands, their collective hope a silent force pushing back against the storm. Every move Clara made was a decision between life and death. After what felt like an eternity, a sliver of hope appeared. The relentless assault of the storm began to ease. The violent shaking subsided into a rough but manageable shudder. Through a break in the dark, swirling clouds, a faint glow appeared on the horizon. The runway lights, they looked like a constellation of earthbound stars, a miracle in the blackness. The captain let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for an hour. There. It is, he said, his voice hoarse with relief. Prepare for landing. This was the most critical phase. Landing a massive passenger jet in these conditions was a feat for even the most seasoned pilot. For Clara, it was the ultimate test. She took a deep, steadying breath. Her eyes locked onto the runway, the tiny strip of light that represented safety, survival. Her hands were firm on the controls now. She wasn't just flying a plane anymore. She was carrying 178 beating hearts, 178 lives, 178 futures, and guiding them home. The descent was tense, a silent, focused ballet between pilot and machine. The captain called out altitudes and speeds, his voice a low, reassuring hum. Clara responded with minute adjustments, her focus absolute. The ground rushed up to meet them. The cabin was deathly silent, the only sound the whistle of the wind and the strained hum of the engines. Then, with a loud screech of rubber on wet tarmac, the wheels touched down. The plane bounced once, then settled, its massive weight finally back on solid ground. A wave of relief, so powerful it was almost a physical force, swept through the aircraft. A moment of stunned silence was shattered by an eruption of applause, cheers, and sobbing. In the cockpit, the captain turned to Clara, his eyes shining with unshed tears. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "You saved every single one of us," and only then did the adrenaline fade. Only then did the enormity of what she had done hit her. Clara slumped back in her seat, and silent tears streamed down her face. As the first light of dawn painted the sky, Clara walked down the airplane steps. She was met not by a quiet morning, but by a sea of flashing cameras and shouting reporters. News of the miracle on Flight 719 had spread like wildfire. But as they called her name, clamoring for a statement, she simply kept her head down, her expression humbled. She didn't feel like a hero. She just felt like a passenger who did what she had to do. She boarded the plane as a tired traveler, another face in the crowd. But she left it as a legend, a quiet hero whose courage was forged in the heart of a storm. Her name was Clara Mitchell, the passenger who became the pilot, and the sleeping girl who saved them all.